At my mother's funeral, everyone cried, except my father. While I stood there clutching her photo, he was in Palm Springs, smiling beside his mistress, champagne raised like he was toasting her death. That was the moment something inside me cracked. Grief turned to fire. Because if there's one thing I knew for sure, it wasn't her heart that failed her. It was his. My name is Kimberly Martinez. And that night, when my mother's phone lit up with a message from beyond the grave, I realized her story wasn't over. Neither was mine. The rain fell hard that morning, cutting through the Santa Fe sky like it had forgotten this was the desert. Each drop sank into the golden sand, turning it into veins of dark red mud that clung to my shoes. I stood still beside the coffin, the black fabric of my coat heavy with water, the umbrella trembling in my hand. Around me, voices whispered, soft and sharp as needles, "Where's Gabriel?" Her husband didn't even come. I kept my eyes on the polished wood lowering into the ground. Every word around me burned through my skin, but I didn't move. Then someone beside me lifted a phone, an image on the screen, palm trees, sunlight, my father, Gabriel Martinez, smiling with a woman half his age, a glass of champagne raised to the camera. The caption read only 2 words, "Freedom at last." A chill slid through me, colder than the rain. My mother was being buried under this sky, and he was celebrating under another. I didn't cry. I couldn't. The grief had frozen, calcified into something harder, something close to hate. When the last shovel of earth covered the coffin, I stayed. I placed a photo on the wet soil, her laughing in front of a painting of sunflowers. "You deserved more than this," I whispered. That night, the sound of the rain followed me home. I sat at my desk, staring into the dark window, the city lights blurring behind raindrops. My phone buzzed once. A message flashed across the screen, from a number I had sworn would never light up again. "Meet me where we used to paint." My breath caught. The room felt smaller, the air thick with the scent of wet earth. I grabbed my keys. When I opened the door, the wind rushed in, fierce and alive, and I drove, straight into the storm. The road to my mother's old studio wound through the northern desert, a strip of cracked dirt swallowed by the dark. My headlights cut across weathered wooden windows, and dust shimmered in the cold air like ghosts disturbed. When I pushed the door open, the hinges screamed. The smell of paint thinner and rust hit me so hard, I almost turned back. Inside, the silence was suffocating. Brushes lay scattered across the floor. On the easel stood a canvas, unfinished, my mother's final painting. A woman stood in a storm, hair flying. Her body turned toward a faceless man behind her. The colors bled together, the sky gray and violent. I stepped closer, my flashlight shaking. That's when I saw it, a trail of dried blood, thin and brown, snaking from the easel to the far corner. An old phone lay there, screen cracked, edges rusted with dust. I pressed the power button. It blinked once, then came alive, and a video started playing on its own. My mother's face appeared, pale and streaked with tears. Her voice trembled. "If you're seeing this, I didn't die naturally. He came here that night. Be careful, Kim!" My pulse hammered. The word echoed in my chest. Wind burst through the broken window, slamming the door against the wall. The sound wailed like someone crying. I turned slowly. On the wall, drawn with black charcoal, smeared and desperate, were 3 words. He was here. The flashlight slipped from my hand. I fell to my knees, the truth hitting me harder than grief ever could. My father had been here the night she died. And suddenly, the storm outside didn't feel like weather. It felt like a warning. The next day, I drove south, chasing the edge of a pale sunrise to Albuquerque. The city was quiet, streets still wet from last night's storm. Sofia Alvarez lived in a small apartment near the hospital, a place filled with paintings my mother's students had once made. When she opened the door, recognition flickered in her eyes. Her hands shook as she gestured for me to sit. Your mother was terrified, she said softly. Not sick. Terrified. Her words cracked something open inside me. Sophia went on. My mother had been poisoned slowly, exposed to toxic solvents mixed into her paints. It attacked her heart over time. When Sophia reported the symptoms, the test results disappeared. The next day, Gabriel Martinez walked into the hospital with papers for cremation. He said she was tired of life, Sophia whispered. But she wasn't tired. She was afraid. I left the apartment in a daze. The noon sun scorched the asphalt, but I felt frozen, hollow. My mother once told me, if anything ever happens, don't trust him. Back then, I thought it was just exhaustion talking. Now I knew. It was a warning she hadn't lived long enough to finish. I pulled out the old phone again. The video replayed. My mother's eyes pleading through static, fading into light. Her voice, soft but firm, seemed to echo from somewhere beyond the grave. Find the truth, and for the first time, I swore I would. 2 days after meeting Sophia, I drove back to Santa Fe. The sky hung low and heavy, clouds wrapping the Sangre de Cristo Mountains in a dull gray shroud. The whole city felt muted, like the world was still holding its breath. I parked outside a small adobe office where my mother's lawyer, Jonathan Keyes, still worked. He remembered me the moment I walked in, but the look on his face made my stomach twist. He sighed, pressing his palms together. I'm sorry, Kimberly. There's no active record of any will under Elena Martinez. For a moment, everything around me went silent. My mother had told me, just a month before she died, don't let him touch the studio. It's yours. I thought it was a figure of speech, something sentimental, but now it was gone, erased. I drove straight to her old house on Canyon Road, its clay walls the same faded red as the desert. Inside, everything smelled of dust and paint thinner. I wandered through the kitchen, where she used to hum while washing brushes. My eyes caught a faint gleam on the shelf, a ceramic jar she'd once used for paintbrushes. I lifted it carefully, and something rattled inside. A small USB, wrapped in a note, for Kim. If he finds this, everything is gone. My hands shook as I plugged it into my laptop. A document opened. The screen glowed with scanned pages. Her will. Every word hit me like a drumbeat. All of my estate, including studio, art rights, and bank accounts, shall go to my daughter, Kimberly Martinez, and to the Community Art Fund. I couldn't breathe. It was real, and it meant only one thing. My father had forged the paperwork, stolen everything she owned, and buried the evidence along with her name. I printed a copy, slipped it into my jacket. As I locked the door behind me, the street was empty except for a black SUV idling across the road, headlights dim, engine humming. A man in dark glasses sat behind the wheel, motionless. My pulse quickened. I turned down a side street, pretending not to notice, though every nerve screamed, he knows I'm digging. That night, I dreamt of my mother painting again. In the dream, a man stood behind her. When she turned, his face was my father's. I woke to the desert wind howling through the cracks of my window, the printed will glowing faintly under the lamplight. It was no longer grief I felt. It was war. Natalie Brooks's studio sat on the corner of Marcy Street, all glass and neon, where women came to stretch and sweat under her soft influencer voice. I watched through the window as she ended her live stream, her smile bright and hollow. Behind her, hanging on the wall, was a painting I recognized instantly, my mother's. It had vanished from the gallery after the funeral. When the class cleared out, I stepped inside. She turned, eyes widening before she hid it behind a sugary grin. Oh, Gabriel's daughter! What a surprise! I nodded toward the painting. How did you get that? He gave it to me, she said, adjusting her leggings. Said your mom didn't want it anymore. I bit back the words burning my tongue. Every brushstroke on that canvas felt like blood. We talked for a while, her tone flirty, cautious, rehearsed. Then she slipped. Her heart stopped way before the ambulance. You know, the air seemed to collapse. Her smile faltered. I must have looked frozen because she stammered. I mean, he said the doctors were slow, but the damage was done. She knew. She had been close enough to hear details no outsider should. I left without a word and went straight home. Opening my laptop, I dug into corporate records connected to my mother's foundation. One name stood out: Brooks Development LLC, registered in Palm Springs a month before my mother died. A new villa purchased under that company's name, funded entirely by transfers from the Elena Martinez Art Foundation. My father hadn't just taken her art. He'd used her own charity to launder money into his mistress's hands, and the timing, days before her death, was too perfect to be coincidence. I called him, my voice barely above a whisper. "Dad, we need to talk." He sounded calm, almost amused. "You sound like your mother when she got paranoid." "Maybe she wasn't paranoid," I said. Silence. Then his voice dropped, smooth and cold. "Stop digging. Kimberly, some things are better left buried." He hung up. I stood at the window, the evening wind cutting across my face. In the reflection of the glass, I saw my mother's eyes staring back at me through my own. I whispered into the quiet, "I won't stop." The storm inside me had found its direction, and this time, I wasn't the one being buried. 3 nights after that call, I started noticing the black SUV again. Same plates, different driver. Lights flickered in my hallway. My emails were tampered with. He was warning me to stop. I didn't. That night, the desert was pitch black when I left Santa Fe. In the mirror, headlights flared. The SUV closed in fast, its beams cutting through the dust. I slammed the gas, heart pounding, tires spitting sand. I turned off the main road toward the abandoned gas station where my mother once bought her paints. The building appeared like a shadow in the dunes. I killed the lights and coasted to a stop. The SUV roared past, disappearing over the ridge. Inside, a faint blinking light drew my eyes, a dusty CCTV monitor still running. I plugged it in, and the screen came to life. There he was, Gabriel Martinez, 9:47 p.m., suit pressed, bottle of solvent in his hand, walking into her studio. 20 minutes later, he walked out. Calm. Cold. I snapped a photo of the screen and yanked the hard drive out. When I stepped outside, headlights returned. I floored it, speeding through the desert. Rocks struck my windshield, glass cracking under pressure. Finally, the SUV stopped following. By the time I reached home, the door hung open, my laptop overturned, the hard drive gone. I sank to the floor as the wind howled through the vents. My phone buzzed. A message flashed. "He knows you know. Leave now." Her number, my mother's. The coordinates in that message led north into the mountains. Fog clung to the road as dawn crept in. The adobe house appeared from the mist. Its sign faded. La Esperanza Retreat. Inside, a frail woman stepped from the shadows. Hazel eyes I knew by heart. My mother. Alive. I froze. She whispered, "I told you to stay away. Kim." I reached for her hand, cold, trembling, but real. "Sophia helped me," she said. "We switched the records. The woman they buried wasn't me. She told me everything, how Gabriel poisoned her paints, bribed the hospital, and staged the cremation with another woman's body. She'd hidden here in Taos, believing disappearing was the only way to keep me safe. He said he'd make me vanish," she whispered. "And he almost did." I couldn't hold back the tears. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because he would have come for you. He already did." Sunlight spilled through the window, washing her face in gold. She opened a drawer, pulling out a folder thick with contracts and bank transfers. Brooks Development LLC, the villa, the proof. "These are copies. Use them wisely." I gripped her hand. Then we stopped running. Outside, the fog lifted, revealing the red hills of Taos. For a brief moment, I believed the nightmare was over, until the low growl of an engine echoed across the valley. He'd already found us. The air in Palm Springs was thick with chlorine and perfume. the kind of heat that stuck to your skin. Inside the villa, golden light spilled through sheer curtains, painting the marble floor in soft amber. Natalie Brooks lounged by the pool with her phone, and Gabriel Martinez stood at the bar, pouring wine like nothing in the world could touch him. "Kimberly," he said, his voice smooth as glass. "You finally came home." I smiled, calm and rehearsed. "I'm done fighting," I said. "I just want peace." My watch hummed faintly. FBI frequency active. They were listening. He handed me a glass. "You've been misled, sweetheart. Your mother was unstable. Sophia helped her forge everything." "Then explain this." I turned my phone toward him. My mother's real will, the bank records, the CCTV stills. His hand froze on the glass. Natalie's smile cracked. "You went too far, Kimberly," he hissed. "Do you think anyone will believe a daughter over her father? They will when she walks in." The back door opened. My mother stepped inside, thin, alive, unbroken. Gabriel's eyes went wide. "You're dead. You tried to make me dead," she said. The mask slipped. His voice rose. "Farrell! You would have ruined me. You'd burn everything before letting me win." I pressed record. His last words cut through the room. "You were supposed to be dead already." Red and blue lights flashed across the windows. The door burst open. Agents swarmed in. "Gabriel Martinez, you're under arrest," he shouted. "You set me up." "No, Dad, you did that yourself." As they led him away, rain began to fall, rare, warm, and clean. I took my mother's hand. The desert, at last, was breathing again. 3 months later, the courthouse in Santa Fe overflowed with reporters, cameras flashing against the marble steps. My pulse still trembled, even though the verdict was already written in truth. Every headline screamed the same thing. Real estate tycoon faces charges of fraud and attempted murder. When the bailiff called the courtroom to order, I saw him enter, Gabriel Martinez, the man who once commanded every room he walked into. Now his suit hung loose, his hair gray, his eyes hollow. The proud man who built empires from sand finally looked like dust. When my mother took the stand, silence swallowed the room. Her voice was steady, the kind that came from surviving fire. She told them how he poisoned her paints, how Sophia helped her fake her death, how he forged signatures and forced her to sign away her estate. Then she said the words that froze the air. "He told me I was worth more dead than alive." The only sound afterward was the clicking of reporters' pens. I rose next. My hands didn't shake. He taught me how to build strong foundations. I said, "I guess he never thought I'd use that to rebuild what he tried to destroy." I handed over the real will, the bank transfers, the recording. When the courtroom speakers played his voice, "You were supposed to be dead already," he lowered his head and didn't raise it again. The judge's voice cut through the stillness. "Gabriel Martinez, you are sentenced to 35 years in federal prison." The gavel struck once, a sound like thunder over dry land. He turned toward us, lips trembling. "You think you've won?" "We didn't win," I said quietly. "We survived." Outside, rain began to fall, soft, steady, cleansing. A reporter shouted, "Mrs. Martinez, how does it feel to bring down one of Santa Fe's most powerful men?" My mother smiled faintly, the lines on her face easing. "It doesn't feel like victory," she said. "It feels like freedom." I took her hand, lifting my eyes to the gray sky. For the first time in years, the rain didn't sting. It washed everything clean. Spring came back to Santa Fe brighter than I remembered. The desert shimmered under a soft gold sun, yet far beyond the hills, dark clouds were forming, a quiet promise of the first spring rain. The old adobe house breathed again. My mother reopened her small studio, Desert Light, where she taught children from the shelters to paint what they saw, not what they feared. Laughter echoed through the halls that once held only silence. I started Desert Bloom Design, creating spaces for women healing from their own broken lives. Light filled every room, like forgiveness made visible. By dusk, the wind turned cool. I brewed tea for my mother as rain began tapping gently against the roof. The smell of wet earth filled the air, sweet and raw. We sat in silence for a while, the rhythm of the storm steady as breath. Finally, I asked the question that had haunted me for months. Who sent me that first message? Mom? She smiled faintly, her gaze far away. Not me. My phone was gone that night. Then who? She looked toward the desert. Maybe the desert. It remembers everything. Her words sank deep, somewhere between truth and myth. Justice. I realized, sometimes comes not from people, but from the land that refuses to forget. I stepped outside. Rain fell heavier, each drop sinking into the sand, bringing color back to the earth. Behind me, my mother's brush whispered against the canvas. At my mom's funeral, my dad was smiling under another sky. I murmured, but that night, the desert called me back, to the truth. And this time, the rain felt like grace.